BBC 5 Live.
Real sounds of Africa to once again kick off our World Football Phone-In. And this morning we're talking football in Asia and South America, and of course players from over there playing in our leagues. 08085 909 693 is the magic number if you'd like to join in. We're talking football all over the world indeed, from Asia to South America and everything in between, with our super trooper Johnny Durden, or if you like, our Northern Soul, taking care of any Asian football questions and comments. Good morning, Johnny.
Good morning, Dustin. How are you?
Very well, thanks very much. Are you in KL now?
No, I'm in Seoul this morning.
You're in Seoul? Oh, you're in Seoul.
Yeah.
You're in the place to be.
I know the place to be. It's been an exciting week. You know, people have been thinking, well, you know, it's going to happen, will happen this weekend or next week. But then 81st minute corner on Tuesday night, Blackburn Rovers get promotion to the top two divisions and everyone's happy. It's been a very big week.
Yeah, nothing to do with Kim Jong-un then. Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
That's true as well.
Yeah, Tim, he did it very well, Tim. He's been planning this one for some time, no doubt. Tim Ricky, the legend Dino, is over in Rio, taking care of any questions on South American football. Tim, good morning.
Good morning. I'm delighted that joy is unconfined in the streets of Seoul because of the achievements of Blackburn Rovers. Well done, Seoul.
Indeed, East Asia and East Lancs. It's
so we won't talk about my visit to Wembley last Saturday night then, will we, Tim?
Well, if you want to. Did you enjoy yourself? Were you wined and dined to your heart's content?
Yeah, I enjoyed myself for the first 20 minutes, yeah. And then you lot, you always let North London down, don't you? You always let North London down. Why is that?
One mistake, you know, Dembele, all he had to do was go up the line.
I know. I've been talking about that today. It still hurts me. What? What's the matter with you lot? Dembele, he tries to nutmeg Pogba. Have you seen the size of Pogba?
Yeah, and you've seen the zone of the pitch in which he tried it, you know, and how he left the whole thing open. There's one little mistake and it changed the entire course of global history.
You're absolutely right, because I was sitting on that side of the stadium, myself and my Five Live colleague Nihal as well. And he's a true spud like yourself, and he was in tears. I mean, I've never seen a grown man bawling on the ground like that. I maintain my dignity, but not Nihal. He was bawling and bawling and bawling.
I've tried to take it philosophically because my all-time FA Cup semi-final is 1991. It was one of the first ones at Wembley. It was Tottenham and Arsenal. They'd never met in a semi-final before, and Arsenal won the league that year. And so really, essentially, it was the game that stopped them getting the double. And Tottenham did it in style, and Gascoigne and Lineker were both superb, and it was a 3-1 win. And for me, it's a kind of deal with the devil, all right? Let's say you can win that one in 1991 in style, but you're going to lose the next 8. I'd still take it. I'm still fine with that one.
Okay, no more talk about the Spuds, though. We've done our weekly Spuds analysis. Now, can we get on with the real world football?
Fine by me.
Michael says, I'd like to ask the experts how the Club World Cup is being discussed in the experts' regions about the Championship being expanded so European teams will have more teams in the competition. And would this make the competition much harder for teams outside Europe to win? Or do you think this could help the continents as they could compete more and also having more teams in the competition as well? If all that makes sense, Johnny, do you want to go with that one first?
Yeah, well, I think from an Asian point of view, there's no real problem with expanding the Club World Cup, partly because it tends to happen that when a lot of the leagues have already finished, certainly in the eastern part of the region. So I think it will be quite welcome. I mean, the problem that the Club World Cup has, as far as Asia goes, is that there's so much focus on playing the European team, and that's pretty much most of the time in the past few years, that's what people get excited about. It's not so much about people don't expect to win, but it's about having a chance to play Real Madrid, Barcelona, or wherever else it may be. And I think that's always been an issue. And of course, with European teams not taking it very seriously, I think it kind of a little bit damages the competition in terms of its standing. Now, of course, there's talk of a huge amounts of money being invested into expand it into much bigger tournament, and then there's going to be lots more European teams, and if they're really interested in winning it, then of course it's going to be harder for Asian teams to win. But I think it's not something that any Asian team targets at the start of the year, well, we're going to win the Club World Cup. They're very happy to get there, and all they really want to do is play the big glamorous European team and give a decent showing, and then that's enough.
Tim, I suppose there's no continent that takes this Club Cup competition more seriously than South America.
No, it's a kind of bruised ego time, really, because when this thing was founded, for years, there was an annual game between the champions of Europe and South America, and that was the world as far as football was concerned. And then in 2005, FIFA launched this new one with all of the other continents represented. Previously, when it was just Europe and South America, for the South Americans, it was a case of absolute parity between the two leading continents, or if not even parity, the South Americans being better, a chance to prove that they're better. Well, that belongs to yesterday. It just doesn't work like that anymore. The talent has all gone to Europe, and the annual FIFA World Club Championship, it's become quite painful viewing for a South American audience. They have won it since 2005 on 3 occasions, all with 1-0 victories, playing from parking the bus and breaking out and scoring once, and then hanging on for grim life. And even that hasn't happened over the last few years. So 12 European sides and 4 from South America. Where it once was parity, just those numbers tell you that parity no longer exists. And nowadays, there's no guarantee whatsoever that the South Americans can beat the teams from Africa or from Asia. One thing which worries a little bit here, because this isn't an annual tournament. This is once every 4 years, I think. And it's so who would be the teams? Would it be the South American champions from the last 4 years? Well, the problem is that the South American champions from 4 years ago, that team just doesn't exist anymore. They've all been sold. So what kind of form are they going to be in going into this tournament? But I think the big thing that still has to be worked out is how this is going to be shoehorned into a calendar where the Europeans are already playing so much football. And can the Europeans be enticed into this competition, to agree to this competition because of the money involved? And how will they then balance up the amount of fixtures that are being played and the amount of demands that are being made on their players?
Increasingly, I feel that you should be our South Americans in Europe football expert, as there's nothing left for you lot in South America but a bunch of amateurs.
Well, there's plenty of stories, and there's plenty of talent on the way up, and that is, it's always been the biggest privilege that I have in what I do, getting to see them live, because it's one thing to see them on TV, it's another to see it in the flesh. I was in a stadium last night, Vasco against Racing, and the Racing striker, Lautaro Martinez, might go to the World Cup. He's really creating a big name for himself. Looks like he's heading to Inter Milan very soon. And just to be there inside the stadium, watching his body movement and the aura that there is around him, that is still very special. There are still untold brilliant stories coming out of South American football, and hopefully we'll get into some of them tonight. My favourite recently is how a car wash has cost Bolivia's coach his job.
But don't tell us
there are
how.
Still lots of
Keep us guessing on that one, because we're going to be working at the car wash later on. Boom, boom.
Indeed, yeah. We might not ever get rich. It's much better than doing a ditch.
I was going to go there, but I thought, no, let's not go there, because this is a World Football Phone-In. Let's not quote the entire song, but you had to do it, didn't you? Anyway, should we just do this all together now? Neil in Marlborough says, what you say, Neil?
Hi,
Hello.
it's Cornish Pastinho here.
Oh, Cornish Pastinho, good to speak to you. Oh, it's been a while, mate. It's been a while. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
I've got 2 questions. First of all, how is Oscar getting on in China? And secondly, Willian now appears to be back to his best since Christmas. What are the chances of Willian being in the Brazilian World Cup squad?
So, Johnny, do you want to take Oscar in China first of all? He's getting on very wealthily in China, isn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a bit hit and miss, Oscar. So he hit the headlines last season when he sparked the biggest brawl you've ever seen. He kicked the ball at an opponent, and I think it bounced back, and he kicked it again at another opponent. And he wasn't even booked by the referee, but he sparked a huge brawl, about the two teams fighting for a long time. And he was banned for 8 games for this, even though he wasn't even booked by the referee at the time. And even though he's banned for 8 games by the Chinese FA, he was always very keen to make examples of famous foreign players. His coach, which at the time was Andre Villas-Boas, and Hulk and Wu Lei, maybe the top Chinese player, whose teammates, they wore a T-shirt to support him, and they all got hit with a 2-game ban as well for wearing the T-shirt. But his team, he scored some great goals this season in the Champions League, and Shanghai SIPG are going very well at the top of the league at the moment. And in the last 7 seasons, Guangzhou have been champions, but this could be the season that run is broken. Shanghai have never won the league before, come second a couple of times. They got to semi-finals of the Champions League last year, and we got Hulk in attack, and the best Chinese attacker, as I mentioned, in Wu Lei. And so Oscar's, he doesn't perform every week, but he usually does enough to help SIPG climb to the top of the table. But he's doing pretty well. But I think Hulk is the one who gets headlines and is more consistent performer week in, week out.
Yeah, and I know it's vulgar to talk about money, but remind us, how much is Oscar getting for not being the one that is constantly talked about week in and week out?
Well, it's hard to say exactly, because I think his salary runs into hundreds of thousands of pounds per week. I think his club pays his tax for him as well, so he's doing okay. Sure, so I think he can afford to buy a few chow mains and wonton soups.
Yeah, well done for adding that one in. So, what about Willian the Conqueror of Stamford Bridge, Tim?
Well, what are his chances of being in the Brazil squad? 100%. And the coach has already announced that he's in. He's announced kind of 16 of his squad anyway. They're in. And Willian is certainly in. Will he be in the team? Well, he's fighting hard. He's come under pressure for his place over the last year and a half, because the coach was finding it impossible to leave out Felipe Coutinho. Now, Felipe Coutinho, his favourite position has always been Neymar's position, wide on the left, cutting in. But there's a certain Neymar playing there, and that was always a problem for Coutinho. So one thing that they did was use Coutinho on the right, and that meant Willian out of the team. Although he's been playing so well that even if he's out of the team, he's almost, if you like, the 12th man. He's the first substitute that they're likely to turn to. But there is another way of lining up the team, and a way that Brazil are looking at against more defensive opponents, especially for the group games, which would be to have Felipe Coutinho as one of the central midfielders. And that means that you have space for Willian wide left, wide right, and Neymar wide left. So he'll certainly be in the squad, and he's fighting hard to be in the team. And even if he's on the bench, he should well get some game time.
And Neil, with a name like Willian, I suppose we should rinse out the puns, because if he does make it into the World Cup team for Brazil, he will be World Cup Willian, won't he?
He will, yes. A throwback to 1966.
Exactly. I'm glad that you're a gentleman of taste, not to talk of vintage. Neil, we'll look forward to speaking to you again. Thanks very much. 08085 909 693 is your number to call if you'd like to join in the World Football Phone-In this morning, talking football in Asia and South America and players from over there playing in our leagues. We've got the Northern Soul with us in Seoul, where else? And we've got the Legendino, Tim Vickery, in Rio. And we've got Jake in West Sussex. Good morning.
Good morning, Don. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks very much. So I challenged you to what?
You gave me a challenge about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah? What was that challenge?
To come on the show.
Yeah.
For a Brazilian shirt name.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Because I said or suggested that I could say every question that I've ever asked on the World Football Phone. And to be honest, it was interrupted by quite an important event, which I would not like to comment on, because I would reveal my political inklings, right? But that's why it didn't happen. And to be honest, every single week that I've ever listened to the World Football Phone-In, but every single time that I've come on the show, Mina hasn't been on there, so I've got to come on next time she's on, which was last week, right?
Yeah.
I was not.
They're still talking about her last week's appearance on Twitter, on social media.
Well,
They're still going on about it.
But I will get her about Juventus and all that kind of stuff.
Eventually, yeah.
I will. I will get there.
She's
but
not an easy person
to today,
lock down. Yeah.
And I guarantee you, nobody on the World Football Phone-In has ever asked Tim about Celio Silva. But I did several years ago.
Yeah,
I guarantee that. Nobody's ever asked about him. That was
this? What was Tim's answer? What was Tim's answer?
That would have been early 2000.
Yeah, but what was Tim's answer? That's the question now. I mean, you're trying to get a Brazilian shirt name.
He probably said he was a great defender.
No, don't tell me what he probably said. What did he say? You're the one with the memory.
He probably said he was a great defender.
Probably doesn't get a Brazilian shirt name, does it? Doesn't quite work. Yeah, go on. What else did he say? Apart from him being a great defender?
He said, to be honest, he said, I was surprised that Manchester United were interested in him. That's exactly what he said.
Tim?
That's it. Yeah.
He got it right.
People think. Yeah. People think that our brother Jake, wanders around with his hat and his shades and his head in a daze. But he's paying full attention to what's going on. Celio Silva was a Brazilian centre back that United paid a lot of money at the time, and nowadays it would be chicken feed. You couldn't get a Charlton reserve left back, the amount of money that they paid. But at the time, it was big money that they paid for him, and he couldn't get a work permit, so it was a move that didn't go through. But it came at a time when, and he'd been playing for Brazil, but United came in with this huge offer at a time when he hadn't been just dropped by Brazil. He'd been hurled aside with force, So the coming in for a big transfer fee for a player who was really on a downward on a downward spiral. Perhaps United got away with one there. I interviewed him about it, and a lovely fella. But I don't think he was quite good enough to be a United centre-back.
Okay, Jake, you're nearly there. Your Brazilian shirt name.
Go ahead.
No, it's only about more 99 questions to ask you.
That's fine.
Remember,
I will answer all 99 of them.
If you get any wrong, you're done. It's going to be like, you're going to hear this sound. You're going to hear this sound if you get one wrong.
Well, fair enough.
Okay, hold on. So the next question is coming. As we've got Johnny Durden here.
Yeah.
Johnny recently told us about the prospect of Tottenham Hotspur's Son having to leave the club. What was the reason?
What was the reason?
Yeah, that he may have to leave Tottenham.
To be honest, before I called, I didn't listen.
Yeah. But no. He wasn't tonight that he told us this.
He's a fantastic.
I know he is, but there's some reason pressing prior engagement. You could argue.
Well, okay. Well, he's an Asian guy. I would presume that he's got military service. I presume.
He's trying to be clever, isn't he? He's trying to be clever. Okay, Jake, you've been clever.
I'm not clever. I listen to the World Football Phone.
Well, as you should.
That's the thing.
As you should. Now, okay, you've done really well tonight. So call up next week and we'll take part 2 of this. I'm not going to let it be done until Mina comes here and asks you a decent question. And then when you are able to answer what Mina said previously about the decent question, you will get your Brazilian shirt name. I'm a man of my honour. A man of my word and my honour. Scholar and a gentleman. So you still got a few more. I'm looking forward to doing this to you. But probably not tonight, yeah? Let's move on. This is from Lani in New Jersey, who says, Jelani, that is, seeing that Iniesta is announced that he's leaving Barca at the end of the season, I want to ask Tim, how is Iniesta viewed in Brazil? Is he seen on the level of some of Brazil's greatest midfielders, Socrates, Gerson, and so on?
Yeah, he's clearly and to compare him with Socrates, I think is a huge offence to Iniesta. And Socrates had his moments, but Iniesta is a far superior player to anything that Socrates was,
Gerson.
and that's with full respect to Socrates. And Gerson was perhaps more complete, but Iniesta than Socrates, but Iniesta is more mobile. Iniesta is just a fantastic player. I remember, and again, we're getting back to seeing it with your own mince pies, as being in the stadium. I remember being in the stadium in Recife in the Confederations Cup and having a little chat with Belletti. Do you remember Belletti? Brazilian right back, played for Chelsea, played for Barcelona, the man whose goal stopped Arsenal winning the Champions League in 2006. So, chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiroo, Naeem from 40, Belletti from 2. And it was like, we're going to see Iniesta, we're going to see Iniesta. I was so excited about seeing Iniesta. And in watching him play, it was absolutely unbelievable. It's one of those things that just... You remember that kid's toy when we were kids, and younger generation might remember this. You remember like a kaleidoscope? You kind of shook it and it made a new pattern.
That's your generation, mate. That would have been too ultra-techy, high-tech and expensive for my generation.
And that's what watching Iniesta was like in the stadium. Because every little move he made was setting up a new pattern. It was just one triangle after another triangle after another. It was just geometrical brilliance. Just fantastic player. A player who ranks up there with any of the midfielders who've ever played the game, I think, and is remembered with magnificent affection on this side of the Atlantic as well. I mean, so many, especially in Argentina, I think, because they can see some of their best midfielders wanting to be like Iniesta. And let's just remember, just to balance it out after last week's rant, let's remember who made sure that Iniesta and Xavi became Iniesta and Xavi. Guardiola just doesn't go around buying players. Oh no, he formed those. And the pair of them have been magnificent midfielders and are synonymous, I think, with well-played football and admired wherever well-played football is admired. And Johnny, how do you think he'll get on in China?
Well, I think it'd be really interesting to see him in China, especially if he joins the team that everyone's talking about, Chongqing, who is traditionally not a giant of the Chinese game, a mid-table club at best. So he'd be surrounded by players that would be way below the ones he's used to playing with. And so the question would be, of course, everyone knows how good he is, but could he help raise the game of fairly average players around him? And that would be fascinating to see, not only in the games, but in training, having a world-class player, a genuine world-class player, in a fairly average team. What would happen? I think nobody knows. I think the choice of the club would be an unusual one. It's not a glamorous club, as I said. It's in the middle of China. It's a city of 30 million people, almost as many as Spain in total, but it'd be really very, very interesting to see. It'd be the biggest star in Asian football by some distance, I think. And he would have a real chance. I always think about Zico in the early days of the J League. Zico went when he was older than Iniesta, but he had a real impact on the Japanese game, not just the way he played, but just how he showed the Japanese players how to try and win, how to behave. He used to shout at his teammates who maybe smiled after a defeat, and he still had a really different mentality. And certainly in Kashima, where he played, and there's a statue of him outside the stadium there. It's really very well thought of. So I would hope that Iniesta could do something along those lines and really become a game changer in Chinese football and show people, this is how the best players in the world play.
We're talking football in Asia and South America. We've got Johnny Durden, our Northern Soul, who is in Seoul. And we've got the legend, Tim Vickery, who is in Rio. And we've got Ron with us in Southampton. Hello, Ron.
Yeah, hello there. I did my usual sort of viewing of the Australian A-League this morning.
Yeah.
Did a little bet over 3 goals. That was no good. But during the game, this guy, I don't know if you've seen the goal at the Newcastle.
Well, I have, because you gave me some homework. I didn't realise I had homework. But the boss tonight said, Dotton, have you done your homework? If not, you've got to sit in detention. I just had to sit in detention to watch it.
Well, not many people watch the Aussie A-League, to be fair, do they?
No. But there's kind of detention I wish I'd had at school. If they'd said to us, sit in detention to watch some great goals on football, during your detention, we'd have all been crammed in there. We'd have all been doing naughty things at school just to get to do a little bit
What's your
of detention.
description of that, then? Because
the goal?
My description is it was a crazy goal. I'm not so sure whether it was a great goal because it was an afterthought because the ball had gone away from him that he'd sort of just put his foot out and tried to sort of scorpion kick it over his head.
I'll tell you
Possibly, he probably thought it's going to go near the goal, so let's see what happens.
That's a great description of the goal. Johnny is our Asia correspondent this morning, and obviously Australia is within his remit as well. Johnny, I don't know if you want to add any more to Ron's description and tell us whether, what you thought of the goal, whether it was lucky or not.
Well, I think it's got to be the goal of the season. I think it was amazing. The ball's flicked up. It's behind him. He's standing on the edge of the area. He's been surrounded by players, and he just, it's a scorpion, kicks it over his head. It's a volley.
It was
from,
skillful, wasn't it?
20 yards.
Yeah, it was skillful. The goal of the season, I don't know, it might be pushing it a bit, mightn't it, really? But it was crazy. It was great. It was great to watch. I just couldn't believe what I saw. That was the thing. It was just so crazy.
It's certainly a unique goal. I don't think I've seen a goal like that before, actually.
Well, no,
it's really worth watching.
Will we?
Can
I ask you a question about the World Cup, please?
Yeah. Can we come on to that in a moment, Ron? I just want to get Tim's thoughts on this because we gave him some homework as well. And we'll come back to this World Cup business, Ron. Have you seen the goal now, Tim?
I have, yeah. What a wonderful, wonderful thing. And what Ron just said about, let's hit it in the general direction, and that applies to a lot of shots. And that applies, and Bobby Charlton will tell you that's what he did with all of his long shots.
Yeah.
I
agree with you.
I agree with you. General direction of the goal.
I couldn't believe what I saw. I had to sort of slow the TV down and watch it again, and I thought, wow.
And for those who haven't seen this goal, it was a Newcastle...
That helps beat the goalkeeper.
Yeah. They need to see it. It's Newcastle Jets versus Melbourne City.
And what's the name of the guy as well? Reece something wrong?
Oh, God, you asked me a hell of a lot.
Riley McGree.
Riley McGree.
His name is Riley McGree.
Riley McGree, okay. Now,
it's such a great Australian name, Riley McGree.
It's arguably the best of all the Scorpion goals we've seen because... It doesn't go directly towards the goal. It goes in the air, up in the air, and then comes down right in front of the goal mouth and bang into the back of the net. And when I first saw it...
He's looking. He's looking in that direction. It's a brilliant moment of improvisation, and he knows what he's trying to do. It's not a fluke, and he's looking where he wants to play the ball.
There is skill in what he did. There is skill in what he did, Jed, undoubtedly, because when I wound it back and looked at it, I just thought, wow, I can't believe I've seen this.
Yeah, you have to wind it back over and over again, because I initially thought it was fluke, and then I saw it about 3 or 4 times, and then I realised it's not fluke.
The intention was there, wasn't it?
But it's also, I think Tim's right in that it's improvisation, because there was nothing else he could do. There was nothing else. He was running towards the goal mouth. The ball goes slightly behind him, and there's absolutely nothing else he can do but try out. And he did it.
I think it's possibly the same as the goalie with the scorpion kick to keep the ball out. I don't think it's anything that we're ever going to see again.
Yeah, Johnny, do you agree?
Yeah, well, I think I've never seen a goal like that before. As you said, it's something you have to watch it again and again just to confirm what you've seen. It's a kind of one of those jaw-dropping moments like, did you see that? And now watch it again and again. It's amazing.
And just before you ask about the World Cup question, Ron, let me just ask listeners to email or text us best goals you've ever seen. Most unbelievable goals, if you like. Most unbelievable goals that you have ever seen.
They need to Google it, don't they?
Well, yeah. And text me on 85058 or email upallnight@bbc.co.uk. What's the most unbelievable goal you've ever seen? And who scored it, obviously, and which teams? So you wanted to ask a question, is it of Johnny or Tim about the World Cup?
Well, to everyone there, right? I was very disappointed with the European Championships because they crammed extra teams into it, and they said the best finishing team who finished third go through and all this. And I think Portugal were one of the worst teams in that, and yet they won it. They didn't even win a match in 90 minutes. Not even the final was won in 90 minutes. And I just thought, this is what they're on about doing with the World Cup, putting a load more teams in it. And I just thought, I'm 61 now, and I just think to myself, why do they keep ruining football by bringing money into it? You know, it's just money orientated now instead of thinking of the fans. And to me, there's going to be just so many matches that are just a waste of time. But I mean, Portugal, they weren't that great, were they, to be honest?
Yeah, Johnny, Russia essentially is in Asia, is it, or Europe? How would you describe
not
it?
Really. Yes and no. I think. Of course, part of it is, but it's not really counted as an Asian country. Not part of. I don't really watch much Russian football. To be honest.
Yeah, you were just trying to get out of your homework there, aren't you? Nice sneaky way of saying, well, China, that's not really Asia. Don't really watch much of that. Oh, Korea, it's not really Asia, is it? Okay, so where should we go with the question about Russia then? Are they spoiling the World Cup or not then, Johnny?
No, it's not the Russian one. It's the one after. It's the ones coming up in the future that they're on about putting.
But that's why I was asking generally, are they spoiling the World Cup or not, Johnny?
Well, for me, to have 48 teams in the World Cup, of course, is a lot. But I think from an Asian point of view, to jump from 4 teams to 8 is a great thing, because I mean, what you see, like almost every time in the World Cup, in 2014 you had Australia, Iran, Japan and Korea. 2015 you have the same teams, and also Saudi Arabia. So at the moment with 4 automatic places, there's only really, I mean, it's always a team who can really come out of nowhere and surprise. But looking at 6 or 7 teams in the whole of Asia who've got a chance, really, a good chance of getting there. But to have 8 teams at the World Cup really opens it up to many, many more Asian nations. If you do the right thing, if you can, get the right policies, the right youth development, the right league system, then half of Asia theoretically will have a chance in the next 10 or 20 years. Countries like Thailand, which has made great strides over the years, but it's still nowhere near qualifying for being one of the 4 teams to get to the World Cup. But if there's 8 teams, suddenly Thailand has a chance, and it really gives motivation and gives everybody a real dream of getting to the World Cup for the first time. And that's why I'm quite happy with it. Of course, understandably, there are concerns, but from an Asian point of view, it's got to be a good thing.
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I understand John's perspective, and I've heard this perspective placed a few times from Asian-based people. But I'm against the expansion. I think when you're dealing with 200 countries, just over 200 countries, which there are in the world, I don't think it can be less than 32. But I think 32 is the perfect number for one of the reasons that Ron stated. That with 32, you get groups where two teams go through and 2 teams get eliminated. When you get a group of 3 teams going through from a group of 4, I think that turns the group phase into a farce. I think that's poor for the competition. They only want 2 going through that number. Going from 16 to 38, 4, 2, 1, and that number just works perfectly. And clearly, on FIFA are mainly motivated by money. On FIFA have financial problems with all the corruption scandals, and they're urgently looking around to think, well, how can we generate more revenue? I think Ron's point is entirely valid. In terms of Portugal winning the Euros, I think as well as the expansion of the Euros, which again I don't particularly agree with, I think the other thing that comes in there, and it's the real bane of tournaments recently, even if you have the right number of teams, and that's end of season tiredness. Because the teams that really want to play, that have an expansive game plan, that's a draining way to play football. It's easier to play football in a more cautious way. And I think some of the story of a lot of recent tournaments has been that the cautious teams prevailing because they don't quite as much gas in the tank as the teams that really want to take the game to the opposition. So, perhaps too many teams in a tournament is a problem, but also too much football in general is a problem. And I desperately hope we have a great World Cup in Russia, because I think we really need one. For me, I don't think we've had a genuinely great World Cup since '86, and that's a long, long way away. I mean, we're old enough, and Dotton and Ron as well, to remember when the World Cup, you look to it to be a pinnacle of quality. Now, I understand why it's lost that out to the Champions League, because the Champions League are, say the Spanish side that won the World Cup and the 2 European Championships. They're not as good they weren't as good as the Barcelona side of that time, because you got Messi as well, something that Spain can't produce. So the best teams in the Champions League can now be better than the best national teams. I understand that. I understand that the Champions League has taken away the thing of being the main pinnacle of quality, because you're gathering players from all over the world and you're playing week in, week out. So you can take that teamwork up to another level. But I would love to see the World Cup get back to somewhere close to what it was as a tournament you look for, not only for drama, but also for top quality.
Ron, you happy with that?
Yeah, see, it's all about opinions, isn't it? But honest to God, that European Championships was one of the... I thought, if this is what's going to become, I can't be bothered to watch it, because quite simply, I know I've said it about 3 times now, they didn't win a game in 90 minutes. They finished third in a group. The reward was to go through to the next round for finishing third. They still didn't win a game in 90 minutes. They still edged through again, and you're just thinking, and they were boring, to be quite honest with you. They were playing not to lose instead of playing to win. And I just thought, this is awful. I'm 61, and that's the worst football tournament I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, I know it was, but I remember going to the Euros, I think it's 2004 for 5 Live, which was in Portugal. And on behalf of the Portuguese fans who we met there, who didn't win anything in that one, but were still going around the streets shouting, "Campeones, campeones, campeones, campeon." Ron, thanks very much. Noel in Northampton's with us. Hello, Noel. How are you?
Hello, second-time caller, long-time listener. In fact, it's so long ago, Will Lock was the man for the North American.
Wow.
The question is,
Big Will. Wow.
Yeah, it was an obscure question about Northampton Town just signed a keeper, a Barbadian keeper, and they played in the 2nd division of the Florida Football League. So it was a bit of a curveball, and no, he knew nothing about it, but I did expect him to. It's a bit cheeky of me. But my question is, what is the most maligned domestic football competition in your regions? I was thinking about the American Cup that's been going since the turn of the century, and it is maligned. I had a little to do with someone on social media who's an American fan who said it meant nothing, and I didn't understand why, because it's been going for so long. And there's my question.
So what's the equivalent of the Europa Cup in your regions, guys? What's the equivalent of the Europa Cup?
No, domestic.
Oh, domestic.
Or League Cup.
Okay, right. Domestic cups. I suppose it'd have to be the League Cup then over here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Arguably, it's the FA Cup nowadays as well. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
nowadays.
Sadly.
So, what is the most maligned domestic cup in Asia then, Johnny?
Oh, it's a tough question. There's quite a lot of cup competitions that are a big deal in Asia, in the West Asian, in kind of in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. There's quite a few cup competitions, and teams generally love to win them. In Japan, there's big competitions. India too, and Southeast Asia. I remember in Korea, South Korea, they scrapped the K League, kind of the equivalent of the League Cup, a couple of years ago, partly because it was being rife with match fixing, because it's such a small tournament and nobody paid any attention to it at all. And clubs usually selected their young players who didn't usually play a game, and these young players were very susceptible to being bribed to try and rig results. So I guess, and then in the end, they just got rid of it completely, and it doesn't exist anymore. So I guess that would be one that was very much maligned, but so much so that now it doesn't exist.
Yeah, there's an argument as to why that one is maligned, because people didn't believe in it because of the corruption, I suppose. But in terms of, if we said for footballing reasons only, would it still be that? If footballing reasons only, and by that I mean the way that the competition is structured, whether it's the old two-legged tournaments or whatever it might be. If we were to say it in that way.
Well, occasionally, even the Asian Champions League has issues because of the travel involved until the final. Asia's divided into 2 geographical zones just for basic, practical reasons. You can't be travelling from, Sydney to Tehran in the midweek and then come back to play a game at the weekend. I mean, you're talking about a round trip of 48 hours, whatever it is. But even this season in the Asian Champions League, you often get teams who will completely rest their first teams for an away game. It happened again in the group stage. Japanese team Cerezo Osaka even had a chance to go through to the knockout stage, but went to Guangzhou in China, and rested most of their best players. And this is a real issue for the competition, even though it's kind of flagship tournament for Asian club football. But even so, there are still teams and occasionally countries who don't take it very as seriously as they should. And it's a debate on how can you make them take it seriously if that's possible. Maybe reduce the number of slots that some countries have if their teams don't take it seriously enough. But it's always been a problem in Asia. But there's not really domestic competition that is maligned. There's some that are not very popular, but none that people that look down upon or really hate.
Tim, what about in South America then?
Yeah, on this travel, when are we going to be able to just teleport around the world? Just beam, like you did in Star Trek or something like that. It seems like years and years ago that people have been talking about it, but we still have to get on aeroplanes, and it takes so long. The most maligned one, it's a double-edged sword, this, because some people love them and they do build to dramatic finals. It would have to be Brazil's state championships. Brazil is divided into 27 states, and from January usually until May, this year until April because of the World Cup. The National League doesn't start, and it's a separate championship going on in each of these 27 states. And it goes on. It just seems like it's going on forever. It's like one of those films that you go to that's terrible, and it starts at 8 o'clock, and you look at your watch 3 hours later, and it's 8:15. It is dreadful, dismal games, and no one's interested. And it just clutters up the Brazilian calendar and throws it out of sync with the rest of the world, with the rest of the continent. But it does build to a big final, usually a two-legged final between massive local rivals. So the people who have been moaning about it for months suddenly get really behind the finals. We just had the finals 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the final in Sao Paulo was between the two traditional Sao Paulo rivals, Corinthians and Palmeiras. It went to a penalty shootout. But in the second leg, originally, Palmeiras were awarded a penalty. After an 8-minute delay, the referee changed his mind and just gave a corner. Now, the decision was correct. The defender played the ball. It shouldn't have been a penalty. Everyone accepts that it shouldn't have been a penalty. However, Palmeiras, who were denied this penalty after 8 minutes and went on to lose in a penalty shootout, Palmeiras have gone crazy about it because they are saying, even though they don't contest that the decision was correct, they're saying that this correct decision, was made as a result of someone who'd seen television images telling the referee. So they've gone as far as to hire detectives from a detective agency called Kroll, which I'd never heard of. I know Rudy Kroll, who played for Holland in the mid-70s. I didn't know that he'd started this detective agency in 30 different countries, based in New York or something like that.
Made your point.
Like, honestly, they're hiring detectives to prove that someone who'd watched the TV told the referee that it shouldn't have been a penalty, and the decision was correct, but because it was made, they allege, the wrong way. They're kicking up blue murder about it, which shows you that even after months of irrelevant games, when you get to the final, everyone cares about it.
Yeah. At least it wasn't the number one ladies detective agency. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Noel, in Northampton, you happy with that?
I am very happy with that. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful weekend, John.
Well, before that, hang on. How long will it be before we reconvene, you and us?
Next time I come up with a good question. To be honest, I'm really nervous and stuff like that, so it's not easy for me. But I love the show, and I listen to it live and the podcast because I missed the first 20 minutes because of my break. And last week's show, Mina was just awesome. It was radio heaven. It really was. It
really was. I know. And it's been covered on social media ad infinitum since last week for anybody who's interested. But I don't want the next time you call to say, just to tell you how long ago it was since our last call. Well, Johnny Durden was your Asian football correspondent.
I hope not.
No, it won't be that long. Yeah, thank you. My pleasure. Don't worry, Johnny. You're not getting your P45 just yet. Not for a long long time. Yeah, I'm just checking. We all get nervous when somebody calls up and says, "Well, the last time I called up, Sean Wheelock was your American football correspondent." Anyway, lots of text to get through. So let me throw a couple of... lots of best or most incredible goals ever. Well, he's going to have to declare an interest in this one. This is Paul, who's a surprise, Man City FC fan, who says, best team goal, West Bromwich Albion versus City. Edison rolls it out to Walker 37 touches later without West Bromwich Albion touching the ball. Sane puts it in. That's when I knew we would win the league. Yeah, you would, wouldn't you?
That's Paul. Paul, a Man City fan. I wonder who the list of candidates might include.
I know. I was thinking about that. That's why I said he's got to declare an interest. Graham from... And also, it's not just that he's Paul. It's the way he describes it. Okay, this is how it was. Edison rolls it out to Walker. 37 touches. Anyway, yeah, it's definitely a Paul with a Sarah's in the surname, I suspect. Ronnie Radford versus Hereford United in the FA Cup, says Graham from Preston.
For Hereford, I think. Was that Hereford against Newcastle?
It might have been.
When Hereford were non-league on a mud heap. He didn't half hit it, if I'm remembering rightly.
Michael in London says, I'd like to get a gauge on the expert's opinion on a controversial point of view. When comparing men and women's football, for me, the argument for equal pay or even anywhere near is a non-starter. It's the men's game that brings in audiences, sponsors worldwide coverage and generates social hype. For me, equal pay should only come into play when the women's game can attract the same scale of interest and be near the equality. And for me, I can't see this ever being the case. I'm not sure if I agree with that.
The point is, I think, from the United States, that does apply. That the women's game or the women's national team in the United States, as I understand it, generates considerable revenue.
Yeah. And as I understand it, do better than the men's game in terms of success as well. But it's one of those things, isn't it, John? It's like, who would ever, I don't know if there's anybody who would say that women's tennis is not on a par with men's tennis. Okay, women may not hit the ball as hard or anything. It's a much more enjoyable game and arguably a much more competitive game than the men's game.
Right, I mean, and this has been an issue in Asia too. I'm not sure if it's still the case, but certainly I think was it the 2012 Olympics? I think when Japan sent its teams to London, the football teams, the men sat in business or first class, I'm not quite sure, but the women were in economy. And at the time, the women were the world champions. And the JFA's argument was, well, the men generate more money. And I also think there's one of the players from the men's team had in the past suffered from what do you call it when you have a problem with long flights? You get
jet lag.
No, not jet lag. No, it's a more serious thing.
Thrombosis.
Right, okay. Yeah.
So I think one of the male players had suffered in the past with that, and he's in his contract, from his club contract, that if he flew, he had to fly first class, and so that was partly used as an excuse as well. But so if Japan, which is a rich country, homes to world champions, sending its teams, it's separating its teams when it's a big tournament. And
I can't believe how you scoffed when I said jet lag. That's the obvious one, wasn't it? You scoffed as if to say, jet lag, have you lost your mind?
Thrombosis, isn't it? That's
right. Exactly. Much more serious, obviously. This is World Football Phone-In. It's Asia and South America this morning. We've got Johnny Duerden, our Northern Soul, and he's in Seoul. And we've got the legendino Tim Vickery, and he's in Rio. We've had so many texts about incredible goals. This one, first of all, though, from JB Nottingham, who says, when I started listening to the World Football Phone-In, I think that Andy Brassel was the European football correspondent. Can't recall when that was. It was a long time ago. Long time ago. Because Andy Brassel's got a long grey beard that he refuses to cut to mark the...
You're joking?
No, I'm only kidding. Come on. Oh, gosh. Anyway,
I would have to take issue.
Yeah. Always been a great show, anyway, says JB. Bergkamp's goal against Newcastle. Ball goes one side of the defender. Bergie goes the other. Sublime goal. From Barrett, who's a nervous gooner baking in Tolsbury. We know why he's nervous. That has got to be one of the greatest goals of all time, because that was definitely intentional. And not only did the ball go one side of the defender, But I think, didn't Bergkamp do a pirouette as well? I mean, a real pirouette, not just a footballing pirouette, a ballet pirouette to the other side of the defender to collect the ball over the other side. Do you know what I mean? That has got to be the most incredible goal of all time. I'm not sure. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about football is you can interpret it so many different ways, and so you get so many different types of goals. Moments of absolute individual brilliance, like the one from Australia, or the Bergkamp one, or the one that Paul, the Manchester fan, brought up, which was a team move, with 37 touches and everyone. And my favourite World Cup goal is the Argentina one against Serbia in 2006, the Cambiasso goal, where everyone passes the ball, and in isolation, none of the passes are particularly special, but you put them together in a sequence, and they're all shifting the opposition around and creating space. And in the end, you keep passing the ball, keep looking for a teammate. In the end, the goal appears. But other people will like other types of goals that have individual genius in there as well. And I think that kind of diversity is brilliant.
Yeah, Johnny, what about incredible goal for you?
Actually, because the best goal, that's judged the best goal, there's an award, isn't it? FIFA has an award called the Puskas Award. And I witnessed the winner in 2016, which is in Malaysia, in Penang. Fayasriba scored this amazing kind of knuckleball free kick that just swung and swerved, and it was just incredible. And I actually interviewed him about the day before he went to, I think, Switzerland to attend the ceremony. I was hoping to get signed up by Manchester United, which didn't happen. But it was really nice because it was a fantastic goal, and no one could believe it who saw it at the time. And Malaysian football gets lots and lots of bad headlines around the region. It's really nice to see everyone get so excited about him winning the award and going to Europe and got it from the original Ronaldo. And it was great, yeah, but I think that's probably the best goal I've ever seen, or certainly in the flesh, and it's a real privilege to see it.
And Richard in Oxford has gone for Zlatan Ibrahimovic's goal against England for Sweden when he scored the overhead kick from halfway line. Yeah. And your colours were wrong. Portugal beat Wales in regular time in the semi-final. Oh, your caller is wrong. Portugal beat Wales in regular time in the semi-final of the European Championship. I think you're right there. Hey, somebody who has been listening to World Football Phone-In since Tim was in short trousers is Andrew the Gent. Hello, Andrew.
Good morning.
Good morning
nice
to
you. Nice to be back on again. Haven't been on for a while.
Yeah, I know. We haven't heard from you for a while. In Blackheath.
No, it doesn't. I have a statement, a sort of a question, and I've got my own answer to my own question.
Of course, that's what we expect from you. That's what we expect from you.
John and Tim agree with it.
Yeah. We don't expect you to stick to the question format. We expect you to express yourself. So
right,
express yourself.
Here's my take on it.
Yeah.
Three great players.
Yeah. One of them has got to have Polish heritage.
Yeah, Lewandowski.
yeah, I'm just checking.
Messi and Ronaldo.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, absolutely tremendous players.
Yeah.
Over the years, I have noticed, I know you have as well, that those three do not perform as well when they play for their countries than when they play for their teams. Now, Ronaldo at Real Madrid, he's got much better players around him than when he plays for Portugal. So therefore, they help to lay on goals for him. Messi, mind you, he's got one or two good players in Argentina, but when he plays for Barcelona, better players, generally speaking. As for Lewandowski, when he plays for Poland, the Polish team that's going to start the first game in the World Cup, 5 of them are fringe players. They can't even get in teams. Szczesny's behind Buffon. There's the bloke Krasicki, fringe player for Hull. Błaszczykowski, fringe player for Wolfsburg. Then there's Zielinski, fringe player for Napoli. They're all going to be playing for Poland, yet they can't get a proper game. So my contention is they score more goals, are more prominent, because they've got much better players in their club teams who make the chances for them. What do you think, Tim and John?
Yeah. Who wants to take that first? Hang on, let me toss a coin. Hang on. Just bear with me. I'm sorry this doesn't work on radio. John, heads or tails?
Tails, please.
Heads it is. Sorry. So that means you're going first, John. It's heads.
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I think it's similar to look at South Korea at the moment. The team's not in a great situation. And being drawn in quite a tough group in the World Cup, Germany, Sweden, and Mexico. So the feeling is the only way they can get through, have a chance of getting through, is to try and make sure that Son Heung-min somehow can play like he does for Korea in the similar fashion with Tottenham. And it hasn't happened very often, partly because Korea are not as good as Tottenham, and certainly in the World Cup, what you're probably going to see is a Korean team that defends desperately and just hopes somehow that Son can do something on the break. But certainly he's not going to get the same amount of ball or possession or chances or passes that he gets when he plays for Spurs most of the time, because the players around him are nowhere near as good. I think that's probably the case. I don't watch much European football because I don't really have the time, but I'm sure that's the case for Messi, Ronaldo and Lewandowski. When they play for their countries, they're playing with players who aren't as good as their club mates, and obviously they're going to get less chances, less time on the ball, and teammates not of the same quality. So even their passes maybe not picked up the same by their teammates.
Is it just about that, Tim? Is it just about the quality of the teammates, or maybe there's something in that some players are club players rather than national team players?
Yeah, but these three are great players who are great players on wherever there's a football pitch. But there are clearly two. I agree with the gent statement, and I think there are two reasons for it. They're surrounded at club level by better players, yes, and also by players who play together every week, so they've got a better blend. And one of the golden rules of football is that the individual star shines when the collective blend is right. If the collective blend is wrong, it's difficult for an individual to shine in football. It's far, far easier to mark him out of the game. I will say in defence of Messi, I think that he's extraordinary for Argentina as well. And Argentina, they wouldn't have qualified for this World Cup without him. He missed 8 World Cup qualifiers. Of 18, he missed 8. In those 8, Argentina picked up 7 points. In the 10 that he played, Argentina picked up 21 points. Messi's presence is the difference between qualifying and not qualifying. I think he scored 7. No one else got more than 2. I don't think I've ever seen a team as dependent on one player as Argentina have become. And we've seen some of their recent results, and they lost 4-2 to Nigeria. They lost 6-1 to Spain without him. They're a shambles, as Terry Thomas would say, an absolute shower. I think some of these results are perhaps putting it into context that really, I don't think he has disappointed for his country. All right, Argentina haven't won anything. They did reach three consecutive finals in 3 years and lost them all narrowly. But, who's their last great fullback? And who's their last great centre-back? And sorry, I don't really count Otamendi, who's good but unreliable. They don't really have a team. I don't think that they've really had a team, a coherent team throughout the Messi era. With the exception of right at the start of his career, 2006, 2007. I think they were good then. Subsequently, I think they've been very, very patchy with a lot of resources in some positions and an absolute paucity of resources in other positions. And I think maybe some of their recent problems... Go on, Jen.
I absolutely bow to superior knowledge. I should have included Messi, but certainly the other two. Now, while I'm still on, may I nominate my best goal? Very parochial, I'm afraid.
Right, yeah. We like parochial. When it's South East London.
Ago,
yeah.
Lewandowski scored 5 goals in 9 minutes playing against Borussia Dortmund, second best team in Germany. The 5th goal, a very flat, fast centre came along, about 4 feet off the ground. He jumped in the air into a horizontal position and smashed the ball first time with a volley into the net. An absolutely amazing goal. And that's, I don't know if you remember, there was his 5th goal in 9 minutes in one match.
Oh, well.
Do you think, Jen? Do you think that Poland, because Lewandowski's a centre forward, isn't he? And he needs supply. And he's not someone who can create that much out of nothing. But if you give him good supply, then he is lethal. Do you think in the World Cup?
He just hasn't got the players of the calibre that they give him the passes in Bayern Munich. Even there, he's brilliant in the air. They will not put centres in occasionally. They love all this on the floor stuff, which is very boring to me.
Jen, I will tell you now, and I'm anticipating this, that right now on social media, people will be saying, great to hear the gent back on the World Football Phone-In. And I'll get that all tomorrow and the day after, and people will be writing as if somehow I stop you from coming on the World Football Phone-In. They'll be blaming me. Dawson.
Well, I would never blame you, but there have been one or two times when perhaps the editor didn't like my question, so it didn't get put on. However...
The editor's no longer working for us.
However, on Facebook, after I phone in, you're quite right being modest, people do write saying, oh, lovely to hear you again, gent. Well done.
We miss you, so make sure you call up more often.
Can I just tell you another thing? The second time this happened, I had to phone without some sort of complaint and so on to a national organisation, and the bloke acknowledged me, saying, "Oh, I like listening to you on the radio." And another one, poor chap, whose wife died a month ago, so I commiserated with him on Facebook and suggested what he might do to alleviate the pain. And so he wrote, "Thanks very much, Andrew, the gent. I love listening to you on the radio."
There you go. There you go. Famous. I wish I was that famous, believe me. You know. Give me some of that fame.
But it's lovely to be able to speak, and I know I'm always very welcome to on the World Football Phone.
Look forward to speaking to you very soon again, anytime.
Thanks a lot.
The gent there, one of the pillar stones of the World Football Phone-In. Now, Michael in Highbury is with us. Is this Guna Samaritan?
Yes, of course it is, yeah.
Yeah, good speech. How are you?
I'm still a bit low, a bit devastated by the Arsene Wenger news.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was a major shock, and I haven't really got over it. Okay. I was always a Wenger-in person.
And that's tied to your question tonight as well?
Yes, it is, yeah. Because you seem to have drifted off the subject, but you, in your introduction to the phone-in, you said you wanted to talk about potential replacements for Arsene Wenger.
And did I drift off the subject?
Yeah, well, you've been talking about greatest goals and other stuff.
Yeah, and we did mention the Bergkamp one, and Arsene Wenger was the manager at that time, so technically we didn't drift off the subject.
Okay. Well, it's not much of a criticism anyway.
No, I wasn't taking it as a criticism. I was taking it as a compliment.
All right.
Go on then. You got a question, yeah?
Yeah. There's a statement I need to make, which, whether you believe me or not, is another thing as well. But my question is, I would like to ask the guys what they think of a replacement, and who I'd like to see is somebody of the standard of the Germany manager, Joachim Löw. I know he's talked about having a year's break from football and having a rest, but I want somebody of that sort of standard.
Johnny Durden?
Well, actually, I saw Arsene Wenger's first ever game in England. I was there at Ewood Park in 1996. And I remember the Arsenal fans being not very happy about it at all because they didn't know who he was, and Arsenal won 2-0. And as a replacement, I don't know, but I remember in 2010, there's a lot of talk at the time because when Wenger actually coached before he came to England, he coached in Japan and he did quite well with Nagoya. And his star player at the time was Dragan Stojkovic, who had gone to Japan before Wenger, but hadn't done that great until Wenger came, and the two really clicked, and it's been kind of a mentor-student kind of relationship, and together they did really well. And but just before Wenger left, he didn't quite win the title. He took Nagoya to second place, but he didn't have time to finish what he started. But Stojkovic became coach later, and he actually won the league with Nagoya in 2010. And at the time, there was a lot of talk that he's going to be, perhaps the ideal replacement for Wenger because they're cut from the same cloth, and these two got on very well. And I think Stojkovic used to visit him every summer in London and visit his house. But unfortunately, his star has faded somewhat, so I think he's not part of the conversation. But that would have been very, very interesting to see kind of the student come up. Of course, he was a fantastic player, come up and had learned lots of things from Wenger in Japan and implemented them in Nagoya, even did something that Wenger didn't do and took the team to the league title, and then to go to London would have been fantastic, but that's not going to happen.
Is Wenger still highly talked about in Japan?
Yeah, and definitely so. And even... he's very well regarded in Japan, not just what he did in Nagoya, but because his own personality. Recently, Japan fired their coach 2 months before the World Cup, which is a big deal. Vahid Halilhodžić, who was in Bosnia, he was Algeria coach in 2014, and one of the reasons that Japanese didn't really like him too much was because he always used to, often in press conferences, he'd talk about how tactically lacking Japanese football was, and he had to help them, and he was seen as talking down Japanese football all the time. And Wenger didn't do that at all. He's very well respected, respectful of the culture and the players. And I think maybe his kind of the way he works, it was very well suited to Japan, where he likes to control everything at every level. And that's what Japanese want in a Japanese company. People, that's what Japanese employees expect from their boss to, you tell me what to do and I'll do it, to the letter. But so even when they fired the coach and they've got a new guy in for 2 or 3 months to the end of the World Cup, there's talk, they'd love to have Wenger as national team boss. I think the media would love it. If there's any chance, I think he'd be able to walk into the job in Tokyo, no problem at all.
Yeah, and just talking of that, although we don't know what his future decisions and plans will be, clearly he's not going to be able to coach for any other club team in the UK just because of his association with Arsenal, and they're already talking of him as a possible England manager of the future. That's highly unlikely. Doesn't seem like he wants to be a national coach. Could he end up in Asia with any of the clubs in China, maybe? I'm not saying that he would do it for the money, because probably isn't that motivated by that. Could he end up in Asia, whether in Japan or China or anywhere else?
Well, in theory, it's possible, because, certainly some of the bigger Chinese teams would have, afford, obviously as the salary is going to be high, could afford him, would be very interested. It'd be a big deal. And perhaps maybe Wenger's kind of guy will be interested, in the Chinese culture and discovering that. So there will be lots of interest if there was a chance, and then he could probably walk into many of the big jobs that become available. But I'm not sure he'd be interested. But yeah, people would love to have Wenger. I think he's a big name in Asia. He's very well respected.
Gunnar Samaritan, are you sure you want the opinion of a Tottenham boy as to who should succeed Arsene Wenger?
Yeah,
you're only going to hear good things.
Yes, of course, because he has so much praised him in the past when I've listened to the programme. Not at all.
Tim? A great man of football, Arsene Wenger. I was worried when Arsenal appointed him because Johnny's saying it, the Arsenal fans were a bit puzzled at the time back in '96 because they didn't know who he was. I did. He brought his Monaco side to Tottenham for a friendly in '88. And they just wiped the floor with us. It was something like 4-0. And it was terrifying. You're watching football on a completely different level. So I was a bit worried when he went to Arsenal. And what a fantastic body of work he's left. I mean, he has changed the identity of the club. He has made the club glamorous and exciting, which they weren't. And Arsenal were solid, reliable. And Tottenham would go out and buy a flashy winger or something every year, and Arsenal would buy a fullback or a centre back, and the fans would go to the stadium singing the names of their fullbacks. Arsenal, he's just completely rebranded the club for a global audience. He's rebranded the club at the very moment that the global league, the Premier League, has become a global concern. So, when I try and tell people here about what Arsenal means to me, which is like Willie Young or something, and they don't have any. That's not the Arsenal that they have in mind. They have the Arsenal of Bergkamp and so on. So it's a big decision to follow him, and it's a crucial decision in terms of what is Arsenal's identity now. Do they go backwards or do they go forwards? On the attraction of someone like Löw, the German coach, I never know how you say his name. It's such a difficult one. It's only 3 letters or 4 letters. Sometimes you put an E.
I would say
I never know how you
Löw.
pronounce it.
Löw.
Yeah, I remember speaking to Elbo, who played for him at Stuttgart at the start of his career, and he just said it. It was like he turned 3 or 4 letters into a tongue twister, like something like Jürgen Löw. I can really see an attraction there, because that is part of the recent German school who have assimilated the idea of Spanish passing football and merged that with the German physicality to produce something which I think would be very, very interesting for Arsenal. For these reasons of identity, and I saw some people talk about Diego Simeone, and much as I respect him as a coach, I think he would be the wrong move for Arsenal, because he's a counter-attack, cover-up coach. That would be back to the Arsenal of Willie Young, to kind of cautious, battling football. I think you want someone more expansive. You want someone who's going to build on the magnificent legacy that Arsene Wenger has left you. Because, when you think about an institution with the age of Arsenal, the amount of time that Arsenal have been around, to come in and to change what that means, and to change it from something solid to something more exciting and more glamorous, that's a massive achievement. So I think what we really need from an Arsenal point of view is someone who's going to build on that legacy, and I think Jürgen Löw would be a fine choice.
Yeah, easy on the accents, even worse than your black country, that one. But tell me this then, I mean, for both of you, and also Gunnar Samaritan, feel free to join in there. I'm fascinated in the sort of suggestion that a new coach coming in has to work with the tools of the previous coach. I get that with the players, but what about the system and so on? If you're saying that a new coach has to fit in, so it's not really a new broom that you're cleaning with, it's more of the same in a way, in which case it begs the question...
Meet the new broom.
Yeah, but then
not very different from the old broom.
Exactly. So why are you getting rid of the old broom? Why are you getting rid of the old broom if the new broom has to sweep clean in the same way as the old broom?
Well,
do you know what Marcello Lippi...
Sorry, hang on, Gunnar Samaritan first, sorry.
Yeah. The idea is to actually just continue the legacy that Arsene Wenger will leave. I mean, you guys have spoken, especially Tim, has spoken before. It's very much the case, I think it happened with Benitez, that when some manager leaves a club and a new manager comes in and is really successful, it is actually a lot to do with the actual legacy of what the previous manager has left behind. And so that's why the thinking is, I understand, to build on Arsene Wenger's legacy and to keep that legacy.
I'm still not convinced with what Tim was saying, that somebody like Diego Simeone, who is a different kind of manager than Arsene Wenger, would be a bad choice for Arsenal, Johnny. Do you know where I'm coming from? I'm just wondering whether you don't have to start again with a new manager, and a new manager can nevertheless adapt to what he's got and add something extra which is different to a game. Where do you sit with this?
Yeah, but I think what Tim said, I think that Arsenal now has an identity, certainly around the world. And, I used to live in Highbury a long time ago, and it still amazes me, as Tim said, that...
Me too.
I remember...
Me too.
Yeah, there's some Blackstock Road.
Can I just say, you can't afford to live there anymore, mate? Not unless you're a millionaire now.
A mate of mine had a council flat there and he managed to get kicked out. Can you imagine how much money he threw away?
I know. Yeah.
Aberdeen Road, I was just so...
Aberdeen Road, my brother lived on Aberdeen Road for a while. He had a nice gaff there, though. He really did have a nice gaff. I'll tell you that. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so I used to go and watch them occasionally. I mean, those days, if you waited 5 minutes, you get a cheap ticket to get in. But So it still kind of amazes me now that, in Asia, Arsenal now is seen as a cool, glamorous team. And it certainly wasn't what I grew up with. So to keep that, I think is important. And I think the reason they're seen in that way is because of, the way they played under Arsene Wenger. But of course, then, what Arsenal really need to start doing is start winning things. I think the ideal situation is, to get a coach who keeps vaguely the same identity, keeps Arsenal entertaining, exciting, and glamorous, but of course get back to winning. I think Simeone, something like that. I think if he came in for a couple of years and could actually deliver some trophies and shake things up, it'd be very interesting. But I think the club really needs to think about what direction it needs to go in. It's been 22 years since they appointed the coach, so nobody really knows how the people in charge think about these things. And I think now it's the first time to see how do they see the Arsenal identity and the philosophy, and whether they keep it going or just want to get back to the top quickly as possible.
08085 909 693 is our number. You've got another 22 minutes or so to join us for this morning's World Football Phone-In. So we're talking about football in Europe and South America and players over there playing in our leagues. And of course, as always, we deviate sometimes, but we don't hesitate. Yeah, exactly. We don't hesitate. We'll deviate, some deviation, but no hesitation in just a minute. Rob in Manchester is with us. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Dalton, and hi, Tim. Hi, John.
Hiya.
Hello.
Hi. Long time listener. This is the first time I've actually rang in. I have to say thank you to you guys because you got me through my university degree all them years ago, and listened to the podcast. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. Incidentally, what degree did you get?
Law degree.
Thank
you.
Yeah, but what in terms of grade? What did you get?
I ended up leaving with a master's degree, so
but what grade in the undergraduate?
No. You have to say what grade, Don.
You obviously listen keenly to the programme, and you know that if anything under a first class honours,
no one has ever asked me what I got.
Anything under a first class honours proves that you haven't been listening keenly enough to the World Football Phone-In. So, anyway, great to have you on. You got a question for Tim? Go ahead.
I have, yeah, Tim. It's about Marcelo, and he's to start. He's one of my favourite players, so maybe I'm a little bit biased. But how close is he to Roberto Carlos in terms of Brazil fans? To me, he seems to be the complete left back. I'm a Manchester United fan, and I would die for him to be at my club. So, what does he need to do to be the best left back Brazil's ever produced?
I think it's a terrific question. When he first got into the first team here in Rio at Fluminense, 2005, when he was a teenager, it was just absolutely taken for granted that he would end up as a midfielder. And I can well imagine, in 2 or 3 years' time, him coming back to Brazil and playing as an attacking midfielder. But he's spent all of his career as a left back. So we have to say he is a left back. I still wonder if he is sometimes. And he is magnificent going forward. Magnificent. But he's a ropey defender. If you compare his defending with the defending of Roberto Carlos, I think Roberto Carlos wins every time there. And he was probably at fault with the Bayern goal in midweek. He was all over the place in that game where Real nearly let it slip against Juventus. And it was all down his flank. And, sometimes attacking fullbacks get blamed for being caught upfield and leaving the space behind them. I don't blame them in that situation because it's impossible for a player to be in two places at the same time. And if you've got an attacking fullback with the attacking ability of Marcelo, you want him bombing forward. Please, bomb forward as much as you like. And it's up to the coach to then balance out his side with someone ready to plug that hole. So I don't hold that against him. What I hold against him is sometimes his positioning. And he was, in a way, I think the disaster that David Luiz had in that 7-1 against Germany in the last World Cup, in a way, I think he got Marcelo out of jail because he was just all over the place on goal after goal, and then sometimes he's yards behind the defensive line, playing everyone onside, for no purpose whatsoever. Sometimes you just wonder where he is and what he's doing. So I don't think he will ever overtake Roberto Carlos as a left back. Because I think Roberto Carlos was more complete as a left-back. I remember like Beckham playing against him and not being able to get any change out of him at all. I imagine, Rob, you'll remember that as a United fan, that Roberto Carlos could just put Beckham in his pocket. Marcelo, you never trust him to put an attacker in his pocket because I don't think he's a particularly good defender. So if you're going to play him, and this for me is going to be one of the most fascinating aspects of Brazil's World Cup campaign, because you've got another one like that on the other side, and Daniel Alves, who's now getting on a little bit. Fantastic going forward, but he at Barcelona he got spoilt a little bit because he became a fullback who played in the opponent's half of the field all the time. So that'll be where the opponents will go gunning for Brazil, in the space behind the fullbacks. And Juventus had clearly done their homework. When they went to Madrid, needing to overturn that massive first leg deficit, they'd clearly done their homework, and they come to the conclusion that is the weak point. We can get him, and they did. So that I think stops him from challenging Roberto Carlos or Nilton Santos in the 50s as the greatest, because I think that they were more all round.
Did you see him as a weak point then, Tim? Do you think he's a weak point in that Brazil? In that Brazil squad that's going to go to the World Cup, and in my opinion, I think one of the better squads there. Is he a weak point? Whereas I would have thought before this conversation he was one of the stronger points.
I think he's both, and I think that it's precisely that makes it so fascinating. That he can be a game changer. He's had a strange career, really, and I was there for his debut for Brazil. It was at White Hart Lane of all places. His debut was so long ago that it happened in a stadium that no longer exists. It was against Wales, and he scored an absolute cracker on a debut. And you're thinking, this is brilliant. He made his debut just before Daniel Alves. And he's played less than half as many times as Daniel Alves for Brazil. Wow. And for a while, coaches would pick anyone but Marcelo, and Dunga hated him. Dunga came to the conclusion that he didn't care enough. Then there was the case with there was a case with Mano Menezes when they played a friendly in London. And Marcelo, he sent an email back to Real Madrid saying, "I've managed to con them into believing that I'm injured, so I don't have to play in this friendly." Unfortunately, and the internet is so dangerous for this, he copied it to the Brazilian coaching staff. So they saw this email, and that was the end of him with that coach. Don't do it before you hit that send button. You got to check. Under the present coach, and this has been one of the many achievements of the current Brazil boss, Tite. He has. And first of all, when he came in, he replaced Dunga. He said, you're my left back. He's filled him full of confidence. I think he's played his best international football for Brazil under this coach. And he's flying and full of confidence. And he's, yes, potentially a massive strong point for the World Cup. But his defending could be a weak point as well. And that's going to be one of the most fascinating things to watch in Russia 2018. Yeah.
Yeah, Rob, appreciate the call, Thanks very much. Look forward to
thank you as well.
No, it's a pleasure, and look forward to speaking to you again. Hopefully not in court, if you know what I mean. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and all of that. Mark in Liverpool's... Yeah, see you later, mate. Mark in Liverpool's with us. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks very much. You good?
Yeah, not bad.
You've got
but I'm doing well.
You've got some suggestions about incredible goals.
Yes, there was a couple. I heard one of your colleagues was talking like, a team goal. And I think the best that I've seen with free-flowing football was, unfortunately, the United one, where they sort of passed it round and then Rooney done that overhead kick. Yeah. I think they done that advert on it where maybe one of the Charlton brothers were talking about it. Yeah. And when you're talking about the beautiful game, I think that sort of epitomises it. It was from the back, passed it right round with an overhead kick. I thought that was sublime.
You know, I was talking about this. I was talking about this just this week, coincidentally, for no apparent reason, with my younger daughter. And I was trying to explain to her, when people say that footballers aren't very clever and bright or whatever, she should stop and think again, because she's the kind of girl that wears a T-shirt that if netball was easy, they'd call it football. But I said to her, listen,
without a doubt, I think with football, obviously, they train a lot. So they're quick-witted and sharp. And
well, this is what Rooney said when they spoke to him on Match of the Day after that overhead kick. He said it was just instinct. I think
without a doubt.
I don't think it was without a doubt. Actually, I think if you play football, if you've played football, you'll know that a certain amount is instinct, but a certain amount is not just instinct. It's instinct coupled with a really sharp intelligence, you know.
Yes, it's like also like a spatial awareness.
Yeah,
it's knowing where the ball's coming, the position you are, the people around you.
Reading the game.
What you're going to do.
Reading the game. Isn't that what you're supposed to go to university to do? Read the game. Read the game, whether intellectually, in history, in science. Read the flipping game. That's what you're there for.
Messi and things like that, they've got like that now where they know where the defenders are around them and the space where they can touch the ball to just dip past them and to take somebody on. That takes a lot of spatial awareness that footballers have.
Tim, you're itching to get in on this as well, are you? Yeah.
Sorry?
No, I think you're both making a point. I mean, intelligence comes in lots of different forms. You know, it ain't just academic intelligence. And the point that Mark made there about the spatial awareness, knowing what's going on around you, knowing just a little touch can take the defender out of the ball. There's no doubt about it. That's a type of intelligence.
Well, you can have it where, like, if someone's passing you the ball along the floor, you can step forward and the defender behind you will step forward, and you can just let the ball run by you and go past them.
And Johnny, you itching to get in on this as well?
Just with your body movements.
Yeah, Johnny, you itching to get in on this as well?
Yeah, I think Rooney is unfairly maligned as, I think probably maybe because where he's from and his accent has not been very bright, but obviously it comes across quite well. And I remember reading something about him like it's a long time ago, before games and night before games, he used to visualise certain situations, what he would do in a certain situation in game time, and do it over and over again. So obviously I think he's a clever lad.
Yeah, and also you have to think fast on your feet. You know what I think it is? I think the bias is one of those biases. I think it's a class bias, you know. It's like
no doubt about it.
Because
amen to that.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, Fred Housego, the first cabbie to win Mastermind. Until he won Mastermind, people couldn't even envisage and think that, hang on, to be able to do the knowledge, you know, the knowledge you have to do to pass the black cabs exams in London, that you have to know the sort of names of thousands upon thousands of different streets and how to get there, how to route yourself to get. That's a lot. That deserves, you know, a prize in itself to be able to remember all of those. So every cabbie, if they weren't intelligent before, became really intelligent through that. And the same as every footballer. Every single footballer.
Just playing it from when you were young and doing it over and over and over again. And then you learn.
But do you imagine the number of different possibilities that they have to think about? That the manager says
no other sport has that. That range of things that you can do in football. You know, you can pass the ball forward, backwards, sideways, in the air, on the ground, long, short. You don't have to pass. You can dribble. Sometimes, as in the fantastic Scorpion goal we were talking about earlier on, it is just total improvisation. But if it's instinct, it's trained instinct. It's honed instinct. You know, it's being mentally sharp in doing that thing that you're trying to do. You never hear these things about lack of intelligence being raised about golfers. So I'm with you all the way, Don. I think it's a class issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for the call, Mark, and thanks for throwing that question in. This one's for you, Johnny, from Daz, who says, would any Asian international teams make it out the other side of a UEFA or CONMEBOL qualifying group?
Oh, I think it would depend on the group. Certainly, in the Asian stage, it's not as tough as certainly some of it. I doubt anybody get through the South American groups. But I mean, it takes time. I mean, if they can adapt to the situations, who knows? I mean, what Asian teams like Japan need is regular top-class opposition. And if they were in South America, they'd get that and then they'd improve. And I think over time, they will be able to get out of these groups. But at the moment, and in isolation, probably not. And hopefully we'll see the World Cup. We've got 5 teams there, and you'd hope that now 5, at least 1 or 2 will get through. But it's not a given. I mean, if you look at each group's in individual basis, and each team's got its work or so, I think.
You know, this question from Jacob reminds me of Kevin Keegan. Do you remember when Kevin Keegan was managing Newcastle? And he, that famous quote of him, not just quote, but we saw it on TV. He said, I'd love it if we did, if we beat them. I'd love it if we. How did he do it again, Tim? Do you remember when he said that?
No, I was already abroad, but it was.
I'd love it if we beat them. I'd love it. I'd really love it if we beat them. Anyway, it's one of those questions from Jacob who says, for each of the teams in your respective regions going to the World Cup, which one other team would they love it if they beat them the most? Who would they love the most? Who would they love the most to beat in the World Cup? Out of interest, Tim first.
Well, for both Brazil and Argentina, it's them Germans. Because Brazil have got the stain in the car, and it could happen in the second round. Brazil have got the stain in the carpet of the 7-1. All right, they just beat them for 1-0 in a friendly in Berlin, but Germany deliberately only picked 3 first-teamers so they could say afterwards, you didn't really beat us. So, for a little bit of revenge there, that would do Brazil very nicely. And also them Germans for Argentina as well, because Germany have ended a number of, the last World Cup, it was Germany beat Argentina in the final. The one before that, it was Germany hammering Argentina in the final. Go back to 1990, again, it's Germany beating Argentina in the final. So they'd love to put one over the Germans. But for Argentina as well, and England is a huge rivalry. So bringing that one up, and that they would love it. They would love it. They would just love it to beat England.
Well, let me go back to that moment, because it was Fergie who questioned the professionalism of the Newcastle players. And it's great to have both a studio manager and an editor tonight who are Manchester United and Newcastle respectively, so they can fill me in, take me back to that moment. So Fergie questioned the professionalism of the Newcastle players.
No, I think he questioned the professionalism of some of the teams Newcastle were playing against.
Oh, right, okay.
I think he said maybe Leeds, or not supposed to trying too hard against maybe United, but not hard enough against Newcastle, something like that.
Right, and then Kevin Keegan said, "Well, Fergie went down in my estimation when he said that. So I'd love it if we beat him." So, what about teams in your region going to the World Cup then, Johnny? Who would they love to beat?
Well, I think you got 2 sides to it. I think if you look at the 5 teams, of course, South Korea and Japan have a very, very big historic and bitter rivalry, and if they could meet in the knockout stage and knock each other out, but certainly that would be one for the ages. You got Saudi Arabia and Iran there as well. But also, I think probably what Asian teams would really love to do is beat a big nation, overseas. So
they'd like to do an Iceland. They'd like to do an Iceland over England, would they?
Well, yes. Korea will play Germany in the group. To beat Germany and go through, that would be huge. They'd love that, of course. Japan's first game against Colombia. Japan has a problem with South American teams in the past. They lost 4-1 to Colombia in the last World Cup, and that would be just a beautiful way to start. And so I think Iran will play Spain. So again, you have that. So I think they have much more immediate, challenges in the group. And after a terrible World Cup in 2014, for those teams to beat a big world power would be just fantastic.
What about fan culture in your regions, in your respective regions? One of our listeners want to know what are your favourite quirks about fan culture in your region. Johnny, do you have any thoughts?
Oh, well, there's a lot. In Korea, for example, I've been to games where before games at half time, people there's little pans where you can with heat, and you can grill your own squid. You can take your own squid, or you can buy dried squid, and you can grill it on their own little pan that they provide, which of course is very interesting. And the food everywhere you go is just great. I mean, to get the best fan experience, I think in certainly is probably I'd say go to Indonesia for some of the big games. In Jakarta, I mean, you get 50, 60,000. The atmosphere is just fantastic. It builds up for hours before. It can cross the line a little bit over into violence occasionally. But for the fan culture, I think Indonesia is very vibrant fan culture, very quite aggressive, very colourful, and the passion is just amazing.
Yeah, and Tim, what about South America? Quirks.
I love the music. I love the music, and one of the quirks I think is drums. And I saw recently a game in Bolivia. It was the strongest, the biggest drum I've ever seen. It's just this huge drum, and you're thinking, well, how on earth were they able to just get it inside the ground? And unless it's kind of made from lots of different parts, and then they bring the parts in separately and then put it together. But it sounds like just like the pounding of the universe. So I think it's the drums that I enjoy most.
This from Jan in Bournemouth, who've got a date with Destiny with Southampton later on. Jan says, "Oh God, I love this programme. Even though I don't get football, it's like a lesson in life. I guess growing up with football-loving fathers and brothers have helped, though. Better than therapy. I'd love it if Jan came on and told us that live. I'd love it. I'd love it. In that Kevin Keegan way. I'm sorry, mate. I can't get it out of my mind. It's one of those things that the editor tonight is not enjoying it because he's a Newcastle man. He's not enjoying it. But anyway, we love it, don't we? Anyway, Tim, can you shed any light on Gustavo Scarpa's bizarre contract situation at Fluminense and Palmeiras? How does he see it being resolved? How do you see it being resolved? And our Flu a better team without him? Our Suhail in Leeds.
No, he's. I can't see him. He's a little creative midfielder, nice left foot. I think he's a little bit too lightweight for Europe. Fluminense got themselves in all kinds of financial problems and ended up kind of ripping up contracts of a lot of their players. And one of them is now in England, Diego Cavalieri, the goalkeeper who Crystal Palace have taken on until the end of the season. And he, alleging unpaid salaries and so on, unilaterally resigned from Fluminense, if you like, and signed for Palmeiras. But it's gone to court. So maybe we'll have to get Rob back, our law graduate, to give us a hint on how this might turn out. But obviously, it's not doing anyone any good.
This is why we're the world famous World Football Phone-In. We've got legal experts and we've got Kevin Keegan with us. So this is from Simon, who's in Bradford. First-time emailer. He's been listening to the show for a year, but tonight's the first time he's listening live, as he usually listens to the podcast at work. He's got a question to him about Gabriel Barbosa still at Inter Milan. If so, is he still highly regarded, or has he not lived up to the expectations, as he's not heard much about him since he joined Inter?
He's back in Brazil. He's back where he started. He's gone right back where he started from. He's at Santos, and he's beginning to score some goals and beginning to pick up some momentum. And Inter Milan is probably the wrong club for him. A lot of signings there have gone wrong recently.
And Johnny, Jake in Dundalk says, just had a look at that Newcastle Jets goal. Wow, what a scorcher. Think that lad maybe deserves a Brazilian shirt name of his own, Riley McGree. Do you think he'll get a chance to go elsewhere, to come to Europe or otherwise?
He's only 19, so I think this time. We'll have to wait and see. But he scored it against Melbourne City, who are owned by the group who own Manchester City as well.
Cheers.
BBC 5 Live.